Your anatomy is a blueprint. You are an architect. Beneath your skin lie the plans for your fastest, strongest, most powerful self. If you can learn the structure of your skeleton, the makeup of your muscle, and the mechanics of movement, you can create your best possible body.
I'm Mike Robertson. This is Built by Science. When you first go in the gym, it's not uncommon to want to hit the big showy muscles on the front. You got your pecs, you got your arms, you got your abs. But when you really start to break your body down, you got two big halves. You got your lower half and your legs, and you got the upper half. But if you want to take it a step further, you got a front half and you got a back half. And everybody that's serious about their physique knows that building a big, wide, and thick back is going to distinguish them from other competitors as well as themselves. So if you're serious about back, that's what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to break this down into 4 different sections. First, we're going to cover the muscular anatomy and all those individual muscles that comprise your back. Second, we're going to talk about the skeletal anatomy, the bones and the joints that are involved in creating these movements. Third, we're going to talk about the actual motions that all of those individual muscles create. And last but not least, we're going to show you some key exercises to make sure you're getting the most out of your back training. There's no better way to understand the anatomy of a back than to look at a great physique. So today, we've got IFBB Physique Pro Craig Capurso to show us what a great back looks like and how to get the most out of your back training. Let's go ahead and dig into the anatomy of your back. The first muscle, and one of the first muscles that most people think of when they think about back training, are the lats. Then I'm going to have Craig spin around here. As you can imagine, it runs from the front side of your humerus, or that upper arm bone, comes down, attaches to your scapula, it attaches to your lower thoracic spine, or kind of that mid-back area, and it even comes down and attaches to this big piece of connective tissue called your thoracolumbar fascia. So as you can imagine, your lats are critically important if you're wanting to build width side to side through your lats. So that's the first muscle that we're going to talk about. Second, we're going to talk about the trapezius. Most people think of the trapezius and they think of the upper trapezius, the muscles that you get when you shrug. But there's actually 3 distinct subsections of your trapezius. You've got your upper traps that run from your skull and your cervical spine or your neck, and they come down and attach to your clavicles. Second, you have what's called your middle trapezius, and these run from about T1 or T4, so that upper middle back area, come across and attach directly to his scapula. Last but not least, you have what's called your lower trapezius fibers. So this runs from your lower middle back, or that lower thoracic spine, comes up and they also attach to your scapula. Last but not least, you have your rhomboids. And while most people think of the trapezius because they're superficial or they're on the outside of the body, the rhomboids are a deep muscle and they lie underneath your trapezius. They kind of run at an angle here from your thoracic spine down to your scapula. You're going to see it a lot when you row or do any kind of horizontal pulling type movement. So with your rhomboids, even though they're not superficial like the trapezius, you're still going to want to put a lot of emphasis on them because they're critical for front to back thickness. Now, keep in mind, we're talking a lot about the upper back muscles here. We know there's tons of muscles in the back. We've already broken up a lot of the lower back muscles in the core trainer. So if you haven't viewed that and you want to learn how to target this area more, make sure to review that video as well. Now that we've covered the muscular anatomy of the back, let's look at the unique bones and joints involved in creating these movements. What I'm going to have Craig do here is give you a profile view. And one of the most important joints in your body when we're talking about back training is your thoracic spine or your upper back. Now you have 12 unique bones here, but you can imagine they run from the base of your neck to about your lower back. So these are really important. You want to make sure when you're doing a horizontal row, like a dumbbell row or a cable row, that you set this nice and stable, because this is what you're going to create your motion off of. It's not so much the upper back that's moving, but your scapula or your shoulder blade. This is where the motion starts. So if you can imagine a little triangular bone here, your scapula sets the stage for your glenohumeral joint or your shoulder. So what's really important to note is these two joints work together to create motion. If you're doing a row, you're set out, You're pulling back, you can see Craig is using his scapula to squeeze back, and he's using his upper arm as well. So they work in tangent to create this movement. Same thing, if he goes overhead, he's using not only his shoulder joint, but his scapula to squeeze down and really target the lats and the lower traps. So as you guys can imagine, if you want to get the most out of the gym, it's not these broken up herky-jerky movements, it's tying all these unique components together to build a really solid upper back. Up to this point, we've covered the muscles of your back, and we've also covered the unique bones and joints. Now let's talk about the actual motions that your back muscles create. When we're talking about your lats, there's two primary movements that your lats create. First is called internal rotation. So if you imagine that your attachment point is on the front of your humerus, it actually internally rotates or turns your upper arm bone inwards. A lot of people aren't familiar with that, and that's okay. What most people are familiar with is shoulder extension. So if Craig goes profile here and he reaches his arm up overhead, we're kind of going into shoulder flexion or reaching up, and then coming down from this position as you would in a lat pull down, a chin up, a pull up. That's going to create shoulder extension. So your lats are there to build thickness side to side through your back. So we got your lats. Now let's talk about the actual muscles on the back side of your upper body. So when you talk about your trapezius, remember we've got this kite here, right? Most people are familiar with your upper traps, and just like Craig's doing here, they're really important if you want to build that top upper trap portion of the traps. Second, you've got the middle trapezius and the rhomboids. So if you recall, they kind of go from the mid-back and they attach to your scapula. So they create what's called scapular retraction, or simply pulling your shoulder blades back together. Last but not least, you've got your lower traps, and if you recall, they kind of run at this angle right here. They're important for creating what's called scapular depression, or kind of sliding your scapula down on your rib cage. So two more things I want you guys to understand are what's called upward and downward rotation of your scapula or your shoulder blade. Now it's a really fancy term, but all it means is, can you get your arm up overhead safely and effectively? So as Craig reaches up, three muscles are working synergistically to create what's called upward rotation of his scapula. His upper traps, his lower traps, and his serratus. So again, it's kind of a geeky term, but it's there to help you guys understand. If you want to get overhead safely and effectively, you need these three muscle groups to be working synergistically to create that movement. Second, when you come back down, you also create what's called downward rotation of your scapula. And here you're using your rhomboids, and a muscle we haven't talked too much about up to this point, but it's called your levator scapulae. And these two muscles work together to downwardly rotate the scapula. Last but not least, if you're like most people, when you started off in the gym, you probably spent a ton of time developing the front. Developing the back is not only a great way to build your physique, but it's going to keep your shoulders healthy for years to come. So make sure you're spending just as much time developing the muscles of your back as you are the front, and you're going to be safer in lifting heavier weights for an extended period of time. Up to this point, we've covered the muscles of your back, the bones and joints involved in training your back, and the movements that your muscles create. Now let's put it all together and show you guys some unique exercises that you're going to use in the gym to get the most out of your back training. Now what's really important here is we've tried to give you guys a different selection of exercises so you can see how your body works in different planes of motion. We're going to start off with a chin-up. So Craig's going to grab the bar, and in this case, you can see he's really going to target the lats. Most people understand that this is predominantly a lat exercise. So he's going to get a little stretch in the bottom so he can really lengthen these guys out. And then at the top, he's going to make sure he finishes, and if possible, he's going to try and touch his chest to the bar. So it's not just lats, but it's lower traps as well. He's getting scapular depression. Good, buddy. Go ahead and do one more. So you guys get a really good feel. It's not just stretching the lats, but at the top, you're getting the lats, but also the scapula coming down, depressing, using those lower traps. So there's a lot more to it than you would probably think, but this is how you're going to get maximal muscle growth. Now that we've shown you guys a vertical pulling exercise, I want to show you guys a horizontal pulling exercise. In this case, a dumbbell row. This is going to be fantastic for developing your rhomboids and your middle trapezius fibers, and it's also going to help you build symmetry or balance side to side between arms. So what I'm going to have Craig do here is just spin around. He's going to set up, in this case with a staggered stance. You can go staggered, parallel, whatever you're comfortable with. He's going to set his upper back, and once he's set, he's really not going to move too much through his upper back. He's going to grab the dumbbell, and then from this position get a nice stretch, not only through the shoulder blade but through the lat, and then he's going to initiate pulling through the elbow, squeeze the shoulder blade back, finish, hold, and then repeat. What's really important here, make sure you're finishing with your shoulder blade. Too often people end up thinking that more motion is good motion and they can do a lot of damage to the front of their shoulder. So think about leading with the elbow, finishing with the shoulder blade, and getting a nice squeeze at the top. Our third exercise is a dumbbell pullover. Not only is this a fantastic exercise for isolating and developing the lats, but if you do it the way I'm going to coach Craig, you're going to also get some anterior core stability and strength, as well as improving your shoulder mobility, because a lot of people struggle getting overhead safely and effectively. So what I'm going to have Craig do here, go ahead, he's already got the dumbbell lined up, he's going to go ahead and lay on his back. And then from this position, what I cue my clients to do is to exhale hard, right? So big breath in, exhale hard. You can see his rib cage come down. He's going to hold this ab contraction, and as he goes overhead, he's going to work hard to maintain this. When he holds this position, he's going to get a really nice stretch on his lats. He's going to make sure he's developing through a full range of motion. One of the big issues, if somebody starts to arch their back really hard, their lats are never getting that stretch, so you're not going to get the same kind of growth. So he's going to go ahead and pull it back over. Awesome. Good. One more. Exhale hard. Abs tight. Good. Hold that, and then get that nice stretch on the sides. Perfect. And come back up. The final exercise we're going to show you guys here today is called a face pull. Now, it's kind of a hybrid movement. It's not really a vertical pull, it's not really a horizontal pull, but that's nice because it gets us out of those standard planes of motion and just breaks up the training a little bit. So what I'm going to have Craig do here, he's going to go ahead and spin around, he's going to grab the rope handles, and it's really important, you want to do this with your thumbs up. You got a very small space here for your rotator cuff to breathe, and if your hands are facing down, that just kind of chokes out your rotator cuff. So you want to make sure you give it space. So if your thumbs are up, you got your shoulders in a really good position. It's just a really shoulder-friendly option. So from this position, he's going to set his upper back, he's going to lead with his elbows, and think about squeezing those shoulder blades together. See a nice squeeze, finishing with the elbows approximately in line with the body, and then go ahead and go again. So you can see nice stretch through the mid-back, and then leading with the elbows, squeezing the shoulder blades back. So it's not a traditional move, or maybe one you're familiar with, but this is a fantastic option for building the upper and the mid-back. After watching this video, you should have a PhD in muscle building. So I hope you guys are going to take this stuff that we've learned in the video and apply it to your training in the gym. With that being said, if I can take one thing, or have you take one thing away from this video, it's that the back works as a seamless integrated unit. You got to have a nice stable thoracic spine, and then when you put your scapula, when you put your shoulder joint, when you create all that movement in one seamless fluid motion, that's when you're going to get the most out of your back training.
Learn muscular anatomy, biomechanics, the skeletal system, muscle function, and the best exercises to build lean mass. Knowledge is power. Know yourself to build yourself. Build yourself with the best. Mind, muscle, masterpiece.